Hey guys, hopefully you can tune back in here. I'm going to try and add Sally into the broadcast and we'll get started on today's fun topic of sunscreen. Thanks for bearing with us. I'm just going to try and get Sally added in here. So a few technical difficulties with the sound. I'm going to bring Sally onto the camera and hope. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Is there any echo or feedback
Not yet.
besides the motorcycle in the background here?
I don't even hear that.
Oh, good.
That's just for your listening pleasure.
Yeah, the joys of living near a downtown.
I know. No worries.
Your picture looks good and I can hear you well.
Good. Same for you. Let me just pull up my notes here. So Annie and I are doing our Facebook Friday on a Tuesday. We appreciate your flexibility, everyone. Just out of honor of everything that's been going on and the turmoil that our country has been in, we wanted to stay silent last week just out of respect. And our goal today is to talk to you about sunscreen. But I want to make sure that I do address, what is going on in the world. And Beauty Counter sent their statement in regards to our support of our belief in the opportunity, the safety, and the equality for Black women, men, and children that is deserved in this country. And Annie and I 100% stand by that. So if you guys have any questions or you want to have dialogue, I invite you guys to reach out to us individually. We're more than happy to have that dialogue. We certainly don't have all the answers. We are learning as we go, but we appreciate Beauty Counter's direction and leadership as we navigate how to move forward and educate ourselves humbly, and really make the change that's needed for our country and for Black lives throughout America. So with that said, it is also really important that we recognize what's happening in our daily lives. Today was my son's last day of first grade. Yesterday was JoJo's last day of her preschool class. I think this is a triumphant day and week for so many mamas. We made it through digital learning, and just good job, mamas, because this has not been easy. And it's now summer, which is exciting and a little bit daunting at the same time. But it definitely means lots of sunscreen in our future. So Annie and I thought we would, meet you guys where you are, say congrats, and offer some education around sunscreen, as this is something that really have educated myself on. Annie's been a huge resource to me. I remember when I first became a mom, reaching out to you and being like, what do I put on my kids? And you have had your own journey of sunscreen. So I'll let you add in your sentiments on sunscreen, and then we'll dive into sunscreen facts and some of our favorites as it attains really to reef-friendly and kin-friendly solutions.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Sal. Well, this is definitely one of my favorite topics, and I'm excited to talk to you about it today. So there's sort of an adage in dermatology, as some of you may know or maybe don't know. I'm a dermatology PA. I have been practicing for 10 years. And so sunscreen in our world really goes without saying, but so much needs to be said and understood because not all sunscreens are made equally, unfortunately. So there, in my opinion, and in the opinion of most dermatologists, nothing else in skincare is really worth doing unless we're using sunscreen and sun protection.
That's
So
amazing.
if you're not doing sunscreen, there's really not a whole lot of need for everything else. Well, there's probably a need for it, but ultimately you're just not going to gain the same results. You're not going to gain the same results from a vitamin C serum if you're not wearing sunscreen. you can't just
Mhm.
constantly be trying to reverse damage and make damage at the same time. So
Mhm.
having that step every single morning, and the biggest key here is reapplication, um, really goes a long way. And we can start as early as 6 months old to apply a physical block to our kids. So we'll kind of get into it, but there's both UVA and UVB that we all hear about. And then there's also other lights too that are really important. So Sal, do you want to break those down for us?
Yes, definitely. And when you bring up aging, because I think this is one of your tips when we were talking about C serum or the new foundation, and you said your number one anti-aging tip is sunscreen.
Right.
And I think that's awesome and so important to repeat. I heard the stat when we were learning about sunscreen that 90% of the signs of aging come from sun
Yeah.
and sun exposure in these rays that we're going to talk about. So, just to reiterate, that point is so important.
Right.
And as we think about the importance of reapplying, I know it can be cumbersome for our children and reapplying and remembering that 80 to 120-minute mark
Yeah.
to reapply for our kids, but it really is key. So let's talk about the different rays that you want protection from. And there's really three. So there's, like you said, UVA. These are the aging rays. These do not burn our skin it's not what's creating the redness in our skin, but it can be most skin damaging. It can it's where it is getting into the free radical damage, which can actually suppress our immune system over time. And it's also associated with higher risk of melanoma. So UVA is a really important one that you want to make sure you're getting protection from. UVB are the burning rays. So this is what we feel when we get the red sunburn. And this can also contribute to higher risks of skin cancer. And then the third one, which only recently came on our radar, is blue light. And blue light is a ray that comes from the sun. But most recently, we've all been sitting in front of our computers and our screens a ton more because of digital learning and quarantine life. We've actually been exposing ourselves to an increased amount of blue light. It comes from technology too. And so a really full spectrum, I think, is defined as UVB, UVA, but we're now starting to see some really innovative solutions to protect, on top of full spectrum, the blue light. Blue light is also going to age our skin, and so we want to prevent exposures there. The most single effective ingredient, aside from shade or skin protection, like skin shirts, sun shirts, is zinc oxide. Um, so I think it's really important when you're looking at active ingredient on sunscreen. If you turn over the label, you want to look for zinc oxide there to make sure you're getting the full spectrum coverage. Um, Anything else you want to add about that? And then we'll go into
Yeah.
SPF and how to break that.
So, when we're looking at the sunscreens over the counter, often, and even in your dermatology offices, sometimes you'll see other chemical sunscreens, and those have to be put on your skin at least 15 minutes before we go outside, because they have to absorb into the cellular level of the skin to create a change that will inhibit damage from the sun. So it's a chemical compound that is changing the cell for 80 minutes, or depending
Mm-hmm.
on the SPS. Um, and then when the sun interacts with it, it's breaking down that chemical, absorbing it into the body and then into the bloodstream. And that's how a chemical sunscreen works.
Mm-hmm.
Way a physical sunscreen works, like Sally mentioned, is like zinc oxide. There's also titanium dioxide. Zinc
Mm-hmm.
oxide is thought to be safer and a better physical protectant, but certainly we see them used in combination a lot. But a physical protectant, which would be either of those two, zinc or titanium, is actually physically sitting on the skin, acting as a layer of protection. And so for so long, that's why it was a white hue. It wasn't um, microionized or non or nano type particles that could be a little bit more smoothly applied. So that's just the difference. And that's why you don't have to technically, although I still like my patients and my clients to do it, put on your sunscreen. You can put it on when you get to the pool and you're going to get protection from that moment forward. But certainly the best practice and what I typically will recommend, and most dermatologists do, recommend you put on your sunscreen every single day, 365 days a year. It's like taking a supplement. You don't take a break. It's always on your skin from your forehead to your chest, and you should put it on before you even put clothes on, right out of the shower, to just get the step over and done with. So that's a little bit of the difference between a physical protectant and a chemical sunscreen.
That is so helpful. And I think it's really key. So I'm going to try to show you guys. I don't know if you guys can see. When you're looking at sunscreen, there's going to be two different categories of ingredients. So you're going to see, typically it's separated in two different boxes. So there are at the top active ingredients, and that's where you're going to be able to tell, is it zinc oxide or is it going to be one of the chemical type of ingredients that Annie mentioned? And then the rest of the ingredients you're going to see down here below. But a quick rule of thumb is if your sunscreen is clear, it's a chemical.
Right.
Okay, so
zinc oxide.
There's no completely clear. We can get we can get sheer,
right.
but not clear.
They shouldn't come out clear.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about, when you look at sunscreen, there's, the SPF range. I remember the body oils that we used to put on, like the Hawaiian Tropic SPF 8. Like what good was that? 4, right? All the way up to, what's the highest? 150? 100?
20, I think.
Okay. And I think it's really easy to think the higher the better. Like the bigger the better. We've been conditioned to think that, but it's actually not true. And I'm going to give you kind of the stats around this. So, SPF is talking about the sun protection factor. It's referring to the protection from the non-melanoma forms of cancer. And it's talking about the UVB rays that it's blocking. So it's not in reference to the UVA blockage or the blue light blockage. So 100% SPF, or I'm sorry, SPF 100 is blocking 99% of UVB rays. When you go to SPF 50, you would think it would be like 50% of that, but it's actually blocking 98% of UVB rays. So that's so minimal. Then you go down to SPF 30, and that's blocking 97% of UVB rays. And then SPF 15 blocks 93%. I think I've heard the shoot for 30 because it seems as though a lot of the SPFs greater than 30 are using chemicals in order to get to that higher SPF range. And it's a balance of SPF protection, frequency of reapplication, ingredient exposure, and all of that, right? But what would you say to that?
Yeah, that's certainly the main component. The other component is often
We'll make you noodle. Hi, buddy.
Hi.
I'm on a video.
Could you turn on Mighty Pups?
Mommy is on a call right now.
Jordan can't do it.
Please ask Jordan for help. Remind him that this is what we talked about.
Jordan can't.
Sorry.
Jordan's fine. Jordan's fine, and you
can address the question if you want to take care of it.
It's okay. The remote is from my phone.
Mom. Mom, Jordan tried, and you can
go try on your iPad. Go try on your iPad, love. I love you. I know you can do it.
I won't look at all.
Then bring it here. Bring the iPad here. Sorry.
What I was going to say is oh shoot.
The SPF to shoot for.
Yes, the SPF.
SPF 30.
I don't know why I lost it.
That's okay.
My train of thought.
It was so entertaining, right? To watch some other kid complain.
I know, right?
You're like, it's not mine.
Right, exactly.
Whew. Well, the other thing I'll add in, and maybe this will jog your memory.
Yep.
That other countries have different laws around this. So in Japan and Europe right now, they don't have anything on the market greater than SPF 50. And I think when we were talking, you mentioned that is coming, if not already, to the United States. So we are seeing a shift And the FDA does regulate sunscreen differently. It's like an independent category than skincare. And it looks like they are starting to look at the ingredients and the safety and the impact on our environment and human health.
Yes. So the FDA, about 2 years ago, I believe, made a change to standardize the labeling and therefore formulations to be SPF 15, 30, or 50. And it goes into exactly what Sally just mentioned, that you get 93% blockage with 15, you get 97% of UVB blocking with SPF 30, and then just 1% higher at SPF 50. And what I was going to say, I jogged my own memory, is that
Love that.
often the higher the SPF, the thicker it's going to be if you have a physical protectant. With a higher SPF, they often, like Sally mentioned, are adding in a chemical sunscreen to make it more cosmetically elegant. I always tell patients, and that's where I have my most experience, but I often tell clients this too, is the most important thing is usability. If you're not going to use the sunscreen, I don't care how good it is, I don't care how expensive it is, you have to like it and use it. I especially have that conversation with men. I can sell you the nicest sunscreen that we have, but if you don't like the way it smells, or you don't like that it's too white on your skin, it doesn't matter. You're not going to use it. It could be the best in the world. So it has to be usable too. So when companies go to formulate sunscreens, it's really important that it's a company that you trust and that it's a company that's working towards ensuring not only cosmetic usability, but most importantly, what they're putting in it and what they're keeping out of it.
That is such a great point, usability, because zero SPF is not going to do it for you.
Right, exactly.
Just having it in your sun bag.
Right, yeah, you could have 5 tubes of SPF 50, but if you don't like them, you want to use them, then who cares?
Right. That's huge. Those are going to be fun conversations when we have teenagers.
Yeah. We've just trained them from the get-go.
Exactly. You just do this. Okay, so now we talked a little bit about the nano, non-nano term, and I think some people like gloss over, and not to get nerdy, but I think it is important to talk about this difference. So can you speak to what we're referring to when we're talking about non-nano and nano zinc oxide?
Yeah. So basically, this term started surfacing when we tried to microionize or make small the particles that are otherwise physically large. And like I mentioned, the 80s skier knows the white sunscreen. That's going to be, the type of zinc that really does not get into the skin, which is a good thing and doesn't get absorbed. So then what started happening, though, is companies started making them so small, the particles, that they could get into the bloodstream. And that's where we have kind of a problem. So nano is so small that it can be absorbed into the skin and therefore the bloodstream, whereas non-nano cannot. So you want a non-nano physical protectant.
Okay.
So that would be titanium dioxide or zinc oxide.
That's
Typically,
awesome.
we're referring, though, to zinc oxide when we're talking about nano and non-nano.
Okay. Awesome. So then we get into what ingredients to skip. And, Beauty Counter has their never list, which is great, but it's not going to be 100% applicable to sunscreen. So I really like to talk about 3 areas of focus to avoid, and tell me your thoughts on this. But the first are the 2 most common chemicals. I will post a great screenshot in the comments of this, so you guys don't have to take notes and you can just see the spelling of all of this. But oxybenzone and octinoxate, I think I got that. Those have both been associated with the decline of coral reefs. Hawaii and Florida Keys have banned them beginning 2021. And so ingredients or sunscreens that contain those are not going to be allowed in those areas because of what it can do to the ocean. But if it's doing something to the ocean, you can imagine it's also going to be doing something to us as well. So that gets me to what's not kid or human friendly. These are ingredients that can be absorbed into our bloodstream. So now we're talking about things like those chemicals, because those chemicals are nano and they're changing the cells, just like Annie talked about. And some of the correlations of impact to health are things like impact on fetus and child development, causing birth defects, impacting fertility, reducing sperm count, um, impacting girls in puberty, as well as appetite suppression. And ultimately, a lot of that, I think, is bucketed into endocrine or hormone disruption, right?
Yep.
And then the last thing is that these chemicals can actually have a chemical reaction when they're combined, ironically, with sun and water, which are the two elements that you are exposing yourself to when you are using sunscreen. And so these two ingredients in particular can have a reaction, whether you're getting into a pool or getting into an ocean. But then if you think about where it's going to be spread, so it's been tested that pools where people are swimming and they have the chemical sunscreen, there's levels of that testing in the pool water, which means maybe you're using your zinc oxide sunscreen and you are still going to be mildly exposed to an amount. So it's going to have a greater impact than just yourself or the person that you put it on. And then thinking about, again, when you're getting into the ocean, where that sunscreen is going to go and how it could impact the ecosystem of the ocean. Bringing up a new altogether chemical, or actually, I don't think it's a chemical, it's a natural, believe it or not, is retin A. Vitamin A is naturally occurring there. I know there is a synthetic option, but we don't have to go there.
Another topic.
Yeah, we believe that it has been banned from sunscreen, but it used to be found in the Neutrogena baby formula. And so I know sunscreens have a 2-year shelf life, so I would just check if you're picking up prior seasons of sunscreen, make sure that it does not have retin A. Retin A actually can increase your skin sensitivity, and so it's the last thing you want. If you're going to be using retin A, that's a whole other conversation, but you don't want to use it when you're exposing yourself to the sun.
Yeah.
And then there's the things like parabens and fragrance. Would probably be the other two most common. Anything else you would want to throw in there, Annie?
Fragrance and
Okay.
phthalates, really.
And you will be able to tell when you spray something if it has that smell, because a lot of these chemicals don't smell good. So they have to put in fragrance for that usability factor that they know people really buy from.
Exactly. And
So,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry, I don't want to take your last point.
Oh, no, you're good.
But it got me thinking about aerosolized and non-aerosolized, and that was probably your next
It
step.
was. That's perfect.
I was going to mention it only because so often when you're at the pool, you can smell that from the next party over, and those particles get into our lungs, can get into kids' lungs. So it's something that we highly recommend staying away from a health standpoint, and also knowing that it gets into the pool water. It's something that I'd like to see, us moving away from in terms of any kind of public or even private pools. But there are options for spray sunscreens that are really nice in their application that are not aerosolized. And so I think it's important to point out that just because you see a canister doesn't mean that it's an aerosolized particle, or that
And when you say it's aerosolized, can you explain that a step further? So does that mean there is a chemical causing that
compress the
function?
air? Yep. So like a hairspray, a conventional hairspray is going to have compressed air and another chemical compound to help expel and keep liquefied the contents. So that's what you see in like the banana boat. And I think you can get at Costco sprays and things like that. But certainly there are some on the market that are non-aerosolized that do come out in a canister that does look similar to an aerosolized spray. And those are, and correct me if I'm wrong, only compressed air and not any other chemical compound.
Right. Yes. So it's not a matter of, does the can look like this?
Right.
It's more of, is it aerosolized, which should be indicated on the front of it, I believe, or not. And there is another option, which we can dive into in a minute.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, awesome. I think we've covered the SPF and sunscreen tips and tricks. And so now we want to get into sharing, our favorite sunscreen. And I think it really comes down to it being our favorite because of the usability factor. It's safer, it's hydrating, it protects, and it's easy to use. And then there's a lot of options. So it makes it really fun to be able to share all of these options with you guys. But we want to start off with something new. Something new came out yesterday. Annie, do you want to tell us about that?
Sure. So Beauty Counter yesterday launched Counter Sun Daily Sheer Defense SPF 25. It's an antioxidant packed mineral sunscreen and it is designed specifically for the face. So it is going to be a white cream to lotion feeling and go on sheer. So it's really a easy, usable sunscreen that's now available on Beauty Counter.
Yay! I'm
Yeah,
so excited.
me too.
I know we haven't had a chance to try it yet, but everyone that I have heard and seen using it is loving it. I think ours is are going to be here this week.
Yeah,
So we can show it on a little bit later. But um, yeah, can you dive into what are the key elements that are giving it the hydration and the protection? It reminds me so much of like what we just talked about with the foundation, how it's makeup and skincare. This seems to
right.
be kind of like the best of both worlds where it's sunscreen, but it's also skincare because of the factors. And so many people have complained to me that sunscreen is drying to their skin. And
Right.
so we really have tackled a solution. But let's talk about how we're doing that with the ingredients included.
Yeah. Often I hear from my patients, sunscreen is so clogging to my pores and it causes me to
Yeah.
break. So having a clean sunscreen and a clean beauty routine really is the first step in clearer skin, whether that's rosacea or acne or eczema, or just generally dry skin.
Yeah.
Certainly, the hydrating factors in this are um, really second to none, the way they combine them. So, first of all, there's non nano zinc oxide, which has great protection against UVA and UVB, as well as that blue light. So, that's why I tell my patients 365 days a year, you might be inside and it's rainy and you're not going outside anytime soon, but you're on Zoom conference calls all day, or whatever, you're just checking your phone and on the computer a lot, it's certainly a good protection to have on your skin daily.
Mm-hmm.
So beyond that, beyond the protection, the hydration factors specifically are hickory root extract, which really helps to support the skin barrier function. So what I mean by that is it keeps hydration in. So it's protecting that barrier and keeping that barrier strong so you can keep out things you don't want and keep in that hydration. Tocopherol, which is vitamin E, is also in this compound, and vitamin E is just a powerful antioxidant and very hydrating to the skin. Helps to defend against multiple environmental stressors, and it just physically tends to feel good on the skin. The last thing is squalene, which is a moisture that helps to keep the skin plump and hydrated. So there's three different aspects of the hydration in the daily sheer defense. And I think that'll go a long way for a variety of different patients and clients.
I'm so excited. That sounds awesome. And I think um, it even makes, I mean, I might be jumping the gun, but I'm like thinking of who wants to use it. And I can't wait for my husband to use it because
Yeah,
he's on calls all day long and he's not always into wearing moisturizer. So I feel like
sure.
maybe this is kind of like two in one for the men in our lives.
Definitely. And with Father's Day around the corner, I think it's a no-brainer. And really right now, for Beauty Counter, there isn't a specific facial sunscreen. Now, any of our sunscreens are great for the face. It's not that you
Right.
use them, but this is designed specifically for the face and specifically to go under makeup. So it'll go on really smoothly, especially for the men who may otherwise not be putting anything on their face. I think also for men, just to have something on there. If then they decide 2 o'clock to go out for a midday run, or they are going to take the kids for a walk down to ice cream or something, then they're already protected. They don't have to reapply necessarily. It depends on your exposure, but the once a day is just a starting point. And if they can have that option now, I think that'll be huge.
Yes. And for the people who are continuing to work at home, like for example, this afternoon we ended up having lunch out in the backyard and we're sitting under the umbrella, but we're still getting exposure to sun
Yep.
in the shade. So,
you can still get 70% of UV rays sitting in the shade. So,
wow.
I didn't take it lightly doing a sunscreen talk outside. I thought twice about that. But
but you're in the shade.
I'm in the shade.
And
but
you're wearing
you still
SPF.
get 70% of UV rays. So obviously I already have my sunscreen on. But just light layers and things like that are really helpful for sun protection.
I'm writing that down because I don't think I knew that stat. That is really amazing.
Yeah. Thinking of UV exposure as just like the air we breathe, that is coming from every angle, that it's not just directly coming from the sun. Obviously, it's
because it can bounce.
Right. So that's why it's more dangerous by a pool or on the middle of the lake or on the ski slopes.
Because of all the reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's huge. Awesome. Okay, so we were going to talk about who is next or who it's good for next. So that is good.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about teens, definitely for women who want to layer their makeup.
Right.
This would be really nice underneath. Who else?
Good question. So really anyone that's looking for a daily coverage that might have some other skin considerations.
Okay.
Just this morning, another consultant that that text message regarding an inflammatory and autoimmune condition, and a product like this is great for someone that has any skin condition on their face in particular, because they still need sun protection. It doesn't change anything by having that condition, but it certainly different sunscreens could worsen those autoimmune or inflammatory conditions. So something like this is great for anybody with really sensitive skin or with a true medical condition that presents on the facial skin. Certainly great for aging skin because you're getting into that SPF that we really want, which is closer to SPF 30. And I don't really know why they didn't just make it 30, but
it was a question that came up, and so they said it was the usability factor. They wanted to get as much coverage or the highest level of SPF while still getting a sheer finish.
Right, exactly. And that tends to be the trade-off.
25 was as high as they could get with the sheer. And, I think it's great that we have the sheer option and we recognize people want to wear their sunscreen. We want to be protected, but we also want to be able to have makeup on and feel beautiful. And so it's striking that balance.
Exactly. I mean, I love Dew Skin, which is our tinted moisturizer, and has a sunscreen in it, SPF 20. But again, if you're going to be truly out in the sun and on walks or hikes or things like that, having a stronger protection and then an option to reapply. So I often recommend applying something like this, the sheer defense first, and then a reapplication would be something like the Dew Skin, because you've already have makeup on, and so that's the better alternative for reapplication. But as we go into summer, makeup may be more for Zoom calls or get-togethers, but this is just a great, really clean application that you may not need a lot of makeup after it either.
Following it, especially if you're using the C serum beforehand, and all of that. Exactly. So that gets us to, where does this fall in our routine? Where would you put this in?
Really good question. So, we have a bee buzzing around.
Oh no,
that's okay. We typically say to wash and then treat and then protect. So in this routine, it would be last. And
It's
always
a part of that protect.
it's part of the protect step. So sunscreen should always be the closest thing to the sun, except for makeup.
Okay.
I've mentioned that in another video. So this is going to be the last step. So you wash your face, use a toner. If you're going to use a serum like vitamin C or countertime serum, that would go third. And then the next step would be to protect. And then you'd apply makeup from there. So if you're doing a full routine, it would be the fourth step. I think for a lot of people, it's wash your face, use a serum, and then a sunscreen. And the beauty of the sunscreen is it might replace your morning moisturizer. So a lot of sunscreens are just a sunscreen, and that's it. But this, as we've mentioned, is also a great skincare tool. And Beauty Counter really is heading in that direction of making products that are multifunctional. So you don't have to choose, oh, do I want to spend my money on a moisturizer or do I want to spend my money on sunscreen? If you're going to spend your money on something, spend it on sunscreen because you're getting a moisturizer in it, and then you don't have to think about your sunscreen again until it's time to reapply.
I love that. I think that's so well said, and that's a good way to prioritize it. Yeah, we all are expected to multi-task in our day. Why not our products?
Right, exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Okay, so what are our options when it comes to sunscreen? So what would you recommend for the body? Let's start there.
Yeah, so for the body, definitely the Counter Sun Mineral Defense Lotion. That's going to be the easiest to apply for our kiddos typically. Here's my trick. I actually combine it with the spray. So our sunscreen, so our sunscreens have the option to come in the mineral spray or the mineral lotion. And I love the lotion for kind of that first pass, and then add some spray to kind of rub it all in. And kids love the spray. They love to play with it. So not to waste it, obviously, but just to do that by a spray. I find that to be a way to really get kids to help out with applying their sunscreen. So we've covered the face. We have a lotion for the body. We have a spray for the body, and we have a tinted spray for the body as well. It comes in 2 shades. And then there's also a stick. So they are all of the same base formulation, just different ways to apply. So the lotion is going to be great if you have a little bit more time, to be rubbing in. I will say it goes on really sheer. So it's not a really thick sunscreen, but it's a great protectant.
It almost feels like a body lotion.
Yeah, and it smells great too because there's also California poppy in that, which is a great blue light deflector. And then that's going to be water resistant for up to 40 minutes. So reapplication after 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And
that one comes in 2 sizes. I love this big size because it lasts me a month or 2. And then it also comes in a great travel size that one day we'll be able to get back to. But this you can carry on when you're flying, which is nice.
Yeah, those are great options, especially for travel.
Yeah.
Yep. So I typically get the larger one for my family. It's more cost effective as well. Yeah. And if you're using it on yourself and even one other person, it's going to
And I'll show you guys. I find this is what I can get the most sheer on for my body. So it does come on white, and that's a lot. Like that's going to be enough for my whole forearm.
I recommend
and it's sheer.
Yeah, that's so quick.
It's amazing. And I find you can rub it in more sheerly. Is that even a word? It's most sheer in the lotion form. I find the spray, you have to do really small amounts and go really quick. Like I wouldn't want to do my whole arm and spray because it dries fast, which is how it gets some of that water resistance, which is positive, but then you're not going to get as sheer of a finish.
Exactly. I do like the combination in terms of just combining them to
it's like a hybrid.
Yeah, I will say I often recommend, and I do it for myself and my family too, is to actually leave it a little bit kind of purpley white looking. That will absorb into your skin and look sheer. So don't worry about your kids like getting every last bit rubbed in.
Right.
As long as they don't go hop in the pool right away,
It's most for us.
It's just for us, yeah. But it is fine to leave it a little thicker. Uh,
Okay.
we underutilize sunscreen like crazy. Not only because
Yeah.
it's expensive, but it's hard to put on, daily and multiple times a day, especially for more than one person in your family. So
Right.
quarter size dollop is actually what is recommended for that face. So that's a lot of product to actually
Yeah.
protect the skin. So
Right. Like a
making sure,
dime size, right?
yeah, so that we're making sure that we're
Or oh, like a quarter size.
a quarter size, yeah, for the face.
Okay.
So
Wow.
it's a
Okay.
good amount of product. So we really want to focus on using enough product and
Yeah.
making sure that um, we're using the right product, of course.
So don't over rub it
Yeah.
in.
I
Okay.
recommend keeping it a little sheer, a little, sorry,
Okay.
light.
A little bit on the white side.
Mhm.
Okay. But I like it for people to know, again, for that usability factor.
Right.
I grabbed sunscreen from a friend's bag last week at the beach, and
Mhm.
I thought it was going to be like ours, and I put it on, and it
Yeah.
was so white. I mean, it was like
Right.
this white.
Yeah.
I was
Exactly.
like, oh, I'm just spoiled with Beauty Counter's formulation. They've just really done a nice job.
They really,
You mentioned the tinted sunscreen. I just wanted to show this to you guys.
yes.
I recommend the darker. I wear the medium deep
Mhm. Me too.
because it really gives like that cosmetic finish.
Yeah.
I think it's best for when you just want a really nice tan look.
Look.
Um, but it's kind of like makeup, so you aren't going to want to wear it with your white bathing suit
Yeah.
and sit on your white towel.
That's what I recommend definitely putting on after you've already gotten to the pool or
Yes,
whatnot. Because if you go sit in your tan leather car, it's going to be on their seats. So
it's going to come
it's
off.
certainly like a vacation or, even at the beach with friends, at the park with friends, but something you want to put on and not have a whole lot of contact with it
The
after that.
fuss. Or it's great like on the legs if you're going to go wine tasting
Yes.
in a black dress,
Yep.
that type of thing. But
Perfect.
it's beautiful and it does even skin tone and it smells amazing. So most of the counter sun is like a citrus scent and the California poppy, whereas this one is more of that gardenia
Yep.
tropical scent.
Manoi.
Yes.
Yes. For sure.
Um, and then the Sunstick, the thing I wanted to just mention about Sunstick is that actually has the highest amount of water resistance or the longest amount of time. So that's water resistant for 80 minutes.
Yeah.
So I actually use a hybrid of the lotion Sunstick with my kids,
Of
and
course.
that's the Sunstick is where I give my kids like the control to apply it.
Yep.
Um,
Great for the face, especially.
yes, and like
Yeah.
when they're little enough, like it does work their
Yeah.
arms,
On
and then
their
I
arm.
just kind of have to make sure that I go over it and make sure I rub it in a little bit. And in the areas where the kids, like the hairline, it's going to be more white. On my kids, I kind of leave it, like you say,
Yep.
like a little bit more of the white, but you can rub it in sheer.
For sure.
And so I think that one's just good to know for water resistance. It's
Exactly.
also great if we're going to like be playing tennis or golf and you want
Yeah.
it on your face and you don't want it sweat to drip into your
Sweat.
eyes, sunscreen in your eyes. It's not fun.
Yeah. What I was going to mention, and I actually need to hop off the call to go pick up at camp. But
No problem.
I was going to mention with the spray too. It's great for the hairline part, especially
Oh,
for kids, and it's going to be a little bit white, residue. But that again, it'll just naturally absorb in, and a really great way to protect that really, indefensible area.
and if you have the tan one, that's going to be good for like bald
Yeah,
spots
for sure.
or yeah.
Yeah.
Great
Good.
tip. Okay, well, thank you so much, Annie. This has been so
Yeah,
fun, and I can't wait to get together and have to use sunscreen
exactly.
in
Exactly.
real life. If you guys are watching this back as a replay, let us know if you have any questions that we didn't answer. If you want help in figuring out which sunscreens are right for you and your family. Last tip I will leave you guys if you have an HSA, health savings account, health spending account. You can actually submit any of our sunscreens for reimbursement because they meet the requirements there. So that's a good way to stretch out your money.
Great tip.
But happy summer,
Yes.
and
Happy summer.
we will be coming to you guys next week. We'll release the topic in the next few days.
Sounds great. Thanks, Al.
Okay, thanks, Annie. Bye.